don't you know? I'll have me a time with a poor man's lady, hitching on a twilight train. Ain't nothing here that I care to take along. Maybe a song to sing when I want.
Welcome to Green Hill Beach. This is a small town south of Providence, Rhode Island, and it is where Dick and Lois Schroder call home. My name is Jack Knight, and I am currently 19 years old. I am from North Carolina, though most of my family originates from the New England area. My mother grew up in East Greenwich with her parents and her two sisters, Katie and Mary Ellen. Ever since I was born, I have visited my family up north almost every single year, whether it's for summer vacation or sometimes Thanksgivings and Christmases. Although I am a North Carolina resident, I see Rhode Island as my home due to the environment that my family has created here for me and my siblings. While visiting my family this year, I decided to make a documentary that could capture the essence of my family and celebrate the two people who made it so special. I am extremely thankful that I have had the opportunity to interview my family, and I am proud to let their voice be heard by you all. This is Growing Up Schroder.
Beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing.
To kick off this documentary, I want to introduce you to the beach house. This is the place where some of my most important family memories have been made, and the place that Dick and Lois call home. This house began as a vacation home that my grandparents purchased to rent out to college students and families who were looking to spend time near the New England beaches. It stayed that way until the early 2000s, when my grandparents decided to sell their home in East Greenwich and move into the beach house permanently. When they began the moving process, there were renovations that needed to be done, including completely remodeling the back porch and transforming it into a sunroom. When we visit the beach house, it isn't uncommon to find my grandparents relaxing on the front porch doing puzzles or watching an HBO series in the aforementioned sunroom. It is hard to imagine anyone else owning and living in this home, as it is extremely evident that they have made this house strictly their own. What was your mother like?
My mother was a very unique personality.
I love beer, but I want it in a glass.
She walked into a room and you knew she was in the room.
And the waiter came out and he put the bottle of beer on the table like this. Boom.
She filled the room very quickly.
And I said, "Sir, I happen to be a lady.
A very, very powerful personality.
And ladies do not drink beer out of a bottle. They drink it out of a glass."
And she certainly never shrank from controversy.
Fuck that shit.
She really enjoyed stirring it up.
Yippee-yay, there'll be no wedding bells for today. I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle, jingle, jangle, as I go riding.
And then when she turned 18, she met my father, who was quiet, solemn, old for his age, and she brightened his life. She made him have a life. And she was the tour director in their family. In most marriages, there's a guy that does the tour directing, and there's a follower. And the follower loves the fact that they don't have to make the decisions. This is what we're going to do. And in our family growing up, she was the one. In fact, she got a 16 millimeter camera when she was probably 30 years old, mastered it, chronicled our lives when no one else ever did anything like that. She was just a very, very charming person, and she also had that underbelly of meanness in her.
Aquarium to offer self-boating class. How nice. This paper is totally useless. You know that, Peter?
Which would come out every now and again. And make her not such a great person in the eyes of some people.
Oh, taking out life insurance on children is the sound investment idea. I should have insured all of my kids for $100,000 and knock them all off. Why didn't I think of that before?
Very, very happy home life. Everything was up, everything was going forward, and she also absolutely worshipped humor. It was a valuable gift to have. And all of my siblings were very, very fun people to be around. Clever with the words, clever with the actions. People wanted them in the party. The party didn't start till my siblings showed up, because that was her standard of quality, was that she wasn't so much into intellect as much as sociability, getting along and being charming, having people like her.
What was high school like for you?
Utopia. It was a small school. There were only 100 people in my class. It was in a town that was young and new. Somewhere around 9th grade, all the wealthy people sent their children off to prep schools. So those that were left, which was included me and my peers who were not so socially well off in the eyes of the world, and we hold sway in that school. We ran the school, and we all thought that we were really quite spectacular. I really believed that we would never afford a house, because when we got married, we were the poorest people I'd ever known. Dick wasn't finished college yet. We didn't even have any clue of what was available out there. He was an economics major. I never knew anybody who even talked about economics. And he came home one day and he said that this 2-family house was for sale. It was pretty bleak. So when you went into the house, the plumbing pipes were all around the ceiling in the house. They weren't in the walls. It was just needed a lot of work. And he said, we can do this. And so we did. But it served us well, because we lived there for 5 years and sold it for $10,000 more than we had paid. We thought that we were rich people now. And we only owned that for a couple of years when my husband got the itch again for bigger. He got a job offer at Rhode Island. And we came here. The kids were not happy. Katie was in 11th grade, and it was very difficult for her to up in 11th grade, leave all of her friends and all of that. She had a hard time of it. Mary Ellen was already out of school. Betsy came here, and she just fell into it because she was only in 5th grade, so she was not uncomfortable with it at all. And that's where he stayed for the rest of his career, in Rhode Island, and I'm very grateful that we did, because it's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to retire to. The ocean is there. It's just, we've had a very, very lucky life. Dick and I, very lucky. Very few reversals. Everything was up. Everything was better. Better.
Who will never settle down where pretty girls are. Well, you know that
Before my grandparents finally moved to Green Hill, they lived in a family home in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, which many consider to be a very lovely and welcoming place to raise a family. While filming this documentary, I reached out to the current owners of the home, and they gave me the opportunity to come visit the place that the Schroder family called home for almost 20 years.
Now that house, when we pulled in there, I did not want to go inside. I didn't like the look of it, nothing. And he said a couple of days later, could we just go inside? I just have a funny feeling it's going to be okay. So we went in, and the layout was good. It was in poor condition. It needed all paint and paper and all that stuff. And from the outside, the curb appeal, my sister would call it, it was a very, very good looking house up on a hill, kind of a little bit up on a hill, and it had a circular driveway, so you would go in one area and come out the other. And I grew to love it very much. As time went on, it was hard for me to leave it.
This is Nancy McPherson, and she was the owner of the home until about 5 years ago, when she decided to sell the home and move to a town over. Nancy purchased this home off my grandparents when I was about 4 years old and has managed to preserve a connection between the Schroder family and any new owners that may live in the house.
So when we brought my little daughter here, she saw the house and was sure that Snow White lived here. This was Snow White's cottage. So your grandmother, being your grandmother, the day that we made the transaction, exchanged keys and whatnot, I walk into this house, and going up the steps there are little vintage toys of all the 7 dwarfs that are going up the steps. I was like, oh my God. And then we go up into Lucy's room. In the closet is a Barbie doll, Snow White, sitting there with her legs crossed, waiting for Lucy to come and move in. But the best part, when I opened up the drawer, there was the spoons, little sterling spoons with enameled tops with Snow White and all the 7 dwarfs on it, and a personal note from Snow White that said, "Dear Lucy, please have a lovely tea party in my cottage." And Lucy was done. It was so sweet. She moved into that room. Yeah, so how lucky was I? I got to live in Snow White's cottage for all those years of her growing up. And then lucky for us, we've also made friends with the people who moved in here, because I'm not giving this house up easily, so.
It was absolutely wonderful to have the opportunity to capture footage of the home that my grandparents spent such a significant portion of their life in, and I cannot thank the owners enough for their time and their hospitality during my visit.
Well, the difference, I think, between then and now was that when we were growing up, for example, we would go out on a summer day at 7 o'clock in the morning and go over to the playground, play all day long, play baseball, do whatever, and come back at 5 o'clock for dinner.
They must eat the paper and that's it.
Yeah,
Well, if you see a mouse catch fire,
that's right.
there you got them.
I was in Florida. Dad picked me up from the airport. It was like an hour drive to the condo. And we're halfway there and he's like, "How much money do you have in your 401k? I was like, I was just getting ready to ask you that. How much money do you have in your 401k? Because that's not an appropriate question to ask an adult.
When you're in, say, in your teenagers, I would hitchhike to college. I hitchhiked to Georgia when I was in the Army, all the way to Georgia. Really? Yeah. I played in a band. I played the bass viol, and I would hitchhike with the bass viol, and someone would pick me up, and I'd be able to slide it into the car, over the seat, and they'd take me wherever I want. Well, you couldn't do anything like that today. The trust among people was much more. Today, everybody seems to question everything, challenge everything, argue about everything, sue everybody, and it just wasn't like that. Everything was a little bit slower, much less sophisticated than it is today. And that's basically what it was like.
Oh, what was college like? Like, what did you go to college for?
To have fun, and because everybody else did. As far as I was concerned, it was simply something that I was brought up to always think of no matter what I was going to go. And that's because of my parents. All you had to do was get in someplace and go to college, and there really wasn't an awful lot of thought behind it. The government was much more responsible than it is today financially. We now have $30 trillion in debt. It's more than we had for all of World War II. When I was a kid, you could buy a candy bar for 7 cents. And now it's probably $3. When I bought a house in 1965, it was $17,000. This house is worth about $700,000. What the heck is wrong?
When did you first meet Grandma? Like, when did you first meet her?
Well, we were at UConn together. I was in Delta Chi fraternity at UConn. She came to a party that we had at our house. She was dating the president of our fraternity at the time, and he went into the service. I guess he was in ROTC, and he went off to his assignment for I don't know how long, and he asked me to watch over her a little bit. And one thing led to another. By the time he got back, she was actually engaged to him for a while, yeah. And that didn't seem to work out. And there I was. Best thing ever happened to me.
Yeah. What's your most memorable story of Katie?
There was a Cumberland Farms down the road, and to hide all this stuff from this party so he wouldn't find out, she took all this garbage, she put it down to the dumpster down at Cumberland Farms. And the guy was so upset, he went through it, found a letter or two to our address. I think he called, and she was outed for doing this.
Oh, he was just crazy.
How is this transition?
Well, same thing on kids acting up at
I
parties.
just have to worry because I'm afraid of the story that's going to come out.
He was like heavy into martial arts when he was cool. He's jumping up and kicking ceiling tiles out of his kid's house. And he's like kicking the ceiling tiles out.
How did we get here? And she's like, do you have first aid? Because I need to. I go, this information we can omit between our relationship. We don't have to even go here.
Let's press delete. Together.
So she's like, oh, I'm good to go because I got the tape, and I was like, again.
These are like the things on steamers, you know, the little.
Stop.
Mostly, he didn't really know what I was doing. So, Mom, Betsy knew what I was doing more than anybody else, I think. So, one time, we used to have a boat, and my father would never let me take it out with my friends. I was probably 16. And my cousin John, on the Schroder side, he came up and was allowed to, and he was only like 17, allowed to take it out. So I got pissed off because why does he get to and I can't? Apparently because I'm a girl, or at least that's what I thought. So one weekend, one of my girlfriends and I decided we were gonna just take it out. So we took it out, we were out on the bay, we were having a good time, we were sunning ourselves, and the thing broke. So we were sitting right in the middle of the bay, floating. We didn't know what to do. We were 16. We were like, well, how are we gonna get the boat back? It wouldn't work. So we got on the CB radio and had to radio for us to get towed back in. And it cost $300 to get it back. To pay for this tow, we spent everything we had, and then they put it back in the slip where the boat goes, and I never told him. He may know now, but I never told him at the time, and so we went down the next weekend to try and use the boat, and the thing didn't work.
Now, in those days, when you went in with your wife to have the baby, they'd kick you out right there at the door. And if we would call my buddy, we'd go out, go drinking, go to bars and everything. We'd come back when the baby was born. But I'll never forget Mary Ellen coming out with the big blue eyes just bursting out of her head. Beyond beautiful. And it's just breathtaking. Well, you'll see it soon when you know what happens to you.
Lotus flowers are really powerful. Does anyone know why? Because they can only grow from mud. So they're a spiritually symbolic flower, because from all the mud there can be transformation into a beautiful flower. Because they literally can only be born from muck and mud. But they're beautiful. So nice. And sometimes I'll bring my chair and just sit here and meditate. Oh, it's just, the birds and everything. So nice.
What was it like growing up with Dick and Lois as your parents?
It was quite a privilege. We had a lot of privilege and a lot of good life lessons all along the way. There was one time when we all went to a local place around here called the Fish Hatchery, and little Katie was like 7, and they had all these like big pools of trout. She was like playing and frolicking around one of the big pools of trout, and she fell in, and then all the trout were like, you know, scurrying away, and she was like, help, help, help. And my dad was able to pick her up like by her shirt quickly. She was flailing around and the trout were freaking out and she was scared and she was fine, but I just remember her little body just being so scared of the trout. We were visiting somewhere and we were staying in a hotel, and your mom had the sniffles and she just kept going in bed when we were all in one big hotel room together, and Mom got sick of it. Like after like an hour of her, my mom was like, enough now. And your mom was like, okay. I mean, there was just so many.
What's the most memorable thing either Dick or Lois has ever said to you?
I remember one time when I was waiting to go into this certain gate to go to Japan to study for a year. And I just looked at my mom and I'm like, I'm really scared. I feel nervous. I'm afraid. And she goes, that's the feeling when you know you're alive and you're living and you're doing adventurous things. So that was powerful. Dad was like, don't wait till you get older to realize how great you are and how magnificent you are in all the gifts you have. Own them, acknowledge them, cherish them.
What was your reaction when my mom decided she wanted to move south and do teaching?
Well, at the time you couldn't get a job teaching. You had to, like they say in Rhode Island, you had to know somebody, and we didn't know anybody. And she tried, and it was unsuccessful. So I said, well, look, why don't you try something in North Carolina? They're looking for teachers, which could have been a mistake. And she said, no, I want to teach and I want to get a job there and I'm willing to risk that. And I said, all right, I'll go down with you and we'll get you settled and get a rent and so forth, and we'll see how it goes. So I drove down. We spent a few days down there finding her place. We did. And then I left her there with much apprehension. But in short order, Chris appeared, which was beautiful because now I knew I had someone to watch out for.
Growing up with my parents was heavenly. There was nothing better than Christmas morning, where the amount of presents were unbelievable, and my dad would have a finale gift at the end that was always for my mother. It was about hard work, always helping, never watching someone work, and you're going to go do something and you're going to make an impact and you're going to get educated. So it was just supportive all the way around. When I do tell stories of what it was like growing up, people are often like, your mom used to do that? Or your dad learned to ski at 50 years old because you expressed interest? It was wonderful. When we would go on vacation, there was always something that would be terrible going on in the vacation, but it was hysterical to tell the story later. We coined a lot of our vacations as Schroder bombs. So I remember going to California when I was 11 on a business trip, and my dad was going to be doing something in San Francisco, and we went along to kind of do California. And I remember the night before we were robbed by our gardeners, but we still went to California the next morning. I guess the gardeners had the wrong day. They knew we were going to be out of town, but they messed it up. Then we get on this trip to California, and Katie had hives that were really, really bad, and she got them when she was anxious. And one of the things that was stolen during the robbery the night before was Katie's shot, that if she did break out into hives, and oftentimes her lips could swell or her tongue could swell just from being anxious, because she hated to fly. And that my mother's pocketbook was taken, her medication, of which my mother would have had to shoot into her behind. Katie was actually thrilled that the medication was potentially gone. Every vacation there was always calamities, but they were hysterical calamities, and it was fun, and we laughed, and we saw the humor in every single thing that happened. The most memorable thing was when I had my second baby, Sophie, and I'm home from the hospital. I am determined to nurse. I tried it with Jack, and it didn't work. I didn't try hard enough. But with Sophie, I was going to nurse. And so I was upstairs in the nursery, and Jack was downstairs. My mom was cooking for him or something in the kitchen. And I'm growing frustrated, sitting in the rocking chair with the boppy, trying to figure out how to get her latched on. And she was really aggressive when she nursed. When you've never nursed before, you gotta, toughen up a little. So I'm nursing her, and she latched on. When it isn't correct, it hurts. And I remember primally yelling upstairs. And part of it was the pain of that, but part of it was frustration, and part of it was I probably was sleeping an hour or two a night. And she drops everything in the kitchen, and you can hear her bolting up the stairs. She's 60-something, bolts up the stairs, opens the door, and I remember her kind of kneeling down, and I'm in the rocking chair, and she kind of grabbed my shoulders, and she was like, "Motherhood is hard." And she had tears in her eyes, and I'm sobbing, and then she held my face, and she was like, "But you can do it. You're gonna do it. You don't have any choice to do it." But it was very memorable because it was like, when you have a baby, you don't get it until you have a baby. Having her always be the one bounding up the steps in situations like that and saying the right thing to make me feel like I was doing a good job, but also, you have no choice right now but to be an amazing mom. But the motherhood is hard, because I think you can say that, but until you do it, you don't really get it. Having a mom that got it has just been very powerful.
So it's all worked out. But the roots, I think the pulling roots are still back here for her. Both of them, really,
Oh, my love, my darling.
And also, it should be pointed out that when I look over the history of the 20th century, we were born at the absolute best possible time in the 20th century to be born.
Get educated. Go as far as you possibly have the ability or the affordability to do. So when you're sitting down at the table, you've got as much education as anybody else and maybe more. That makes you more attractive. That makes you more attractive for people to hire to get into the career that interests you.
Go for it. If you get an opportunity to go to Thailand, go. If you get an opportunity to take a class that is unusual, but the professor is got a good reputation, go for it. Do not marry until you're old enough to know the things that are valuable in a spouse. So, for example, when you're 16, it's looks, dancing, and looks.
And when you marry, try to marry somebody smarter than you.
Why do you say that?
Your father told me that.
Oh, really? My father told him that.
What is it like being parents?
We were talking about that today, and it's almost like you think, why do people do it? I mean, really, it's a lot of work. So that's one part of it. It's a lot of fun, and it becomes the focus of your life, these children. But then they grow up, and that by definition, they have to disappoint you because they move away from you, they get busy and they can't come back to see you, they do things that you're not thrilled about, and then they grow older and wiser, and they realize that what you did was amazing because they're going through it and thinking, how am I going to survive this? And then the worst part is, what I always say is, I have a weight problem because of all the words I've had to eat through my life. For example, no child of mine will ever behave like your child is behaving. Oh yeah? And being a parent is a lifetime occupation. You're never free of these children. You're never free of worrying about them. You're never free of leaving them and how they'll feel when you do. And stuff. And we look at the people who decided to not, for one reason or another, have children. And they get to be our age, and the word alone pops up all the time. Alone at night, alone in the morning, alone at Thanksgiving. What a loss. What a negative to be all alone on your deathbed, all alone when big good things happen and there's no one to tell about it, or bad things happen and there's no one to counsel with. It's a big decision not to have children, bigger than having them, I think.
You're not filming now, are you?
No.